If you're joining us live, thank you and apologies for the delay. We're really excited to be here with you. My name is Maddie Whittle. I am a member of the year-round programming team at Film at Lincoln Center, and along with my colleague Devika Girish, co-programmer of the 58th New York Film Festival Talk section, which you are joining us for today. This is the final installment of our Deep Focus category of talks in this year's festival, which focus closely on a single film or filmmaker. And we're really, really excited and honored to be joined for this talk by Gianfranco Rosi, whose film Notturno is screening in the main slate of the festival. So before we begin, I will just say a few words. The New York Film Festival, presented by Film at Lincoln Center, has always been about bringing the community together to celebrate cinema. And whether you're joining us in New York or somewhere else around the country or the world, on behalf of everyone at Film at Lincoln Center, thank you so much for being part of this truly historic edition of the festival. Thank you to the Film at Lincoln Center board, patrons, members, and all of the dedicated moviegoers who make our work possible throughout the year. As a nonprofit, we rely on your support, and becoming a member is a great way to join our community of film lovers. You can take advantage of discounts and special offers, and help us to continue sharing the best in cinema with New Yorkers, and with our new virtual cinema, the world beyond. If you're not a member, consider becoming one today. You can find out all the information at filmlink.org. We also want to recognize the tireless efforts of all of our staff and volunteers who've been working behind the scenes to make this year's festival a reality. And you can continue to access NYFF from literally anywhere in the world via our free talks series, which this year are virtual and have been taking place throughout the festival. We still have a few more coming up in the next few days, so check those out. They're really not to be missed. We have some really exciting guests coming through to talk about movies with us. You can subscribe to the Film at Lincoln Center podcast for more Q&As and panel discussions. And be sure to subscribe to our newsletter to make sure you don't miss any exciting updates or festival announcements. And finally, you can join the conversation by following us along on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, and share your festival experience with the hashtag NYFF. And finally, a very special thank you to our many festival partners, most especially HBO, who is the presenting partner of all Film at Lincoln Center talks, and including New York Film Festival talks. So thank you so much again for being with us. I'm going to hand the mic over to our moderator, who we are very lucky to have with us today as well. It's Dennis Lim, our Director of Programming year-round and in the New York Film Festival. So thank you all, and Dennis, take it away.
Thank you, Maddie, and thank you all for joining us. I'm very pleased that we have been able to devote one of our Deep Focus talks to the director of a film that is in the main slate this year, Notturno, Gianfranco Rosi. He was with us also in the main slate with Fire at Sea several years ago. Thanks for being with us, Gianfranco.
Thank you.
Where are you right now?
A complicated connection, but we managed.
We managed. So you're at home, or you're in Rome?
I'm in Rome, and this is my studio. This is where I edited the film. That's where everything happened, in this place in Rome.
Great. Well, Notturno, some people tuning in may have caught it at one of our drive-in screenings last night, or perhaps...
A friend of mine went there. He rented a car and he went there. I was extremely flattered because I said, but all my friends in New York, they don't have a car. How do they go to it?
People are renting cars.
He rented a car, he went there, and he said it was a fantastic screening. I don't know how many cars there were. I didn't ask.
But it looked great. And some people may already have caught it on our virtual platform where it's been available since yesterday. And Gianfranco and I actually recorded a Q&A that is specific to Notturno. So if you've seen the film and you want to hear more about it, you can find that Q&A on our YouTube channel. And I thought today we can certainly talk about Notturno, but I also wanted to use this opportunity to talk about your process, your overall body of work. And I thought a good place to start would be, you said some very interesting things in the Q&A, and I wanted you to elaborate on a couple of them. The first one is, you said that for you, missing things is an important part of your process. What you miss is often as important as what you capture. And when you think about photographers or documentarians, the idea of capturing things seems to be of the utmost urgency. The idea of the decisive moment that you must be there for. Can you tell us what you mean when you say missing things is important for you?
It's funny because today I was reading an interview that a friend of mine did it to me, and this was a time of Farhad Sea, and then he said, "Okay, you did Boatman Barcelona, where all your main character was always like this relationship with character." And I said, for me, the time to develop. And then he asked me, "So, what's your next film going to be?" And then I said, "Well, next film I want to be like a reporter, a reportage, and things. I want to go where the war is. I want to be immediate. I don't want to have any more things. I want to be able to film like reality around me constantly, immediately, without developing relationship." And I just read this. I said, wow. And I spent 3 years. I forgot completely about this promise I gave 3 years ago. And then again, in this film, I completely avoided the reportage element. And again, I immerse in the encounter, in situation, in waiting, again, spending 3 years to make this film. And as I completely forgot about this interview that I gave, and that was a promise I gave to myself. I want to be an instant movie, like boom, boom, go like there and focus on things that happen around me. And it means that I'm not able to do that because I talked about it, I forgot completely that was my next project. And then now 3 years later, I did my next project, and my next project is exactly the same, like Boatman Below Sea Level thing, where I go in a place, I go there without knowing anything about that, or there's a little instinct at the beginning, and then I'm waiting for encountering situation, people, moments, and that's where unfortunately my work starts, with encounter. So when I say it's about missing things, it's about, because unless that encounter happen, everything is around me, I cannot feel. And I can start filming only when the whole idea of the film is formed, but this encounter that I have, and they have to fulfill my imagination and what's going to happen once I take out the camera in front of these people. So that takes a lot of time. And for me, this film took me 6-8 months going around with that camera. So imagine how many things I missed. In 8 months, people make 3, 4, 5, 6 movies. And for me, 6-8 months was just collecting few characters, few stories, few places where I was going to meet to start this film. And once there's an encounter, there's a place, and then the place, I hope I can meet a person, and this person has somehow to reflect the density and the importance of this place. And so it's an extremely elaborate process because, you meet people, but then maybe they're not the right people to be in front of the camera. Maybe they don't want to be in front of the camera. But so usually I believe so much in this moment that, Calvino used to say, truth is something that you capture, you turn your head to look at it, and it's already gone. So this is what my film is all about, that moment of encountering, and that moment is gone, and then I have to go deeper and deeper in this first encounter that I had and try to develop something that has a profound intimacy, something that has that become at the end, when I film, become a synthesis of life and a synthesis of the person that I have in front of me. And unfortunately, more of all these difficulties I put on myself, I want to film this like cinema, like the language of cinema is fundamental for me. Mm-hmm. And yet, knowing that what I have in front is belonging to reality. Mm-hmm. So I can never forget this, this interaction between the language of cinema, which is construction, which is waiting for the light, which is formality, which is framing. And yet what you have in front of you is something that belongs to life, belongs to a moment, In order to capture that moment, I miss so many things constantly, because once I put the frame, I keep missing. And once I decide that this is what I want to feel, I wait till something is happening there. So that's what I mean when I say it's about missing things. It's about waiting. It's about waiting for something that is extremely deep inside of me, but I'm not able to elaborate and not able to direct, because I cannot direct that. And I'm able only to interact with it once I spend a lot of time with the person, with the people, with the situation I meet, and I find that moment that really belongs to my intimacy and belongs to the intimacy of the person, of the thing. Sometimes it's just a landscape, sometimes a tree, sometimes it's a moment that is in front of me. And to create this relationship, knowing always that reality is there, and what I'm feeling is true and is real, that's when it becomes the big mess. And once I met Mr. Herzog in a Q&A in Telluride, and I say, how many times I wish I were you, just to have my voice explaining what I'm waiting for and what I would like to capture on all this. But I denied also this. I don't ask questions. I don't make an interview. So in order to capture that it's a long time, long waiting. And only when I know that what I have in front of me is able to open it up and forgetting about my presence and the camera, then I'm able to start filming. So imagine how many things I miss in all this process. This is a very painful process. That's why I say it's my last film every time, because you spend 3 years to develop this language. And I get a lot of people telling me, you cannot film reality like this. Reality, you cannot aesthetize reality. But for me, it's not about aestheticizing reality. It's about being aware of how that moment is important and how many elements contribute to bring that moment up and to transform that element in something else. Because I don't believe anymore that documentary can just be there and be a witness, a passive witness on reality, like observing something. For me, it's not enough. For me, the reality has to be transformed in something else. And transforming that reality in that moment, it takes a lot of element. And for me, one of the major elements is light that contributes.
Yeah, but before we talk about the process of transforming the reality, of actually shooting, I want to hear more about this process of discovery and immersion that is so central to your method. So I think you've done this with every single film you've made, right? You've started by just immersing yourself, even starting from Boatman to...
Boatman was 5-6 years. I don't know. There's I deny myself how many years was that film. But that film was shot in 16 millimeter, and I didn't have enough film. I was like a film student at NYU, basically. And every trip I did, I had 2-3 hours of film with me. So it was very difficult to capture that moment. So for me, again, that's where I start understanding, waiting for the moment. Sometimes I was pretending filming, and I didn't, because I had only 3 reels. I was with someone, I was pretending I was filming, but I didn't, because I know I was not ready, the situation. I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and then the person started forgetting about me being there, and that's when I start filming. And that's the moment when I can somehow finding that there is a moment that he forgets about my presence, the person. And that's what it's about. It's like having the person is in front of the camera forgetting that I'm there. And that takes long time.
In this very long sort of phase of pre-production, are you capturing anything, even if you're not using the camera that you would use for the film? Do you capture images for yourself? Do you already at that point start thinking about notes? Okay. Wow.
Clumsy notes, a lot of clumsy notes.
So you're thinking about the structure of the film, about certain ideas are already coming to you in that stage.
Yeah, and I already showed you this. This was my map.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this map, I have 10 of this map. Now I found this one here. but it's full of notes. This map for me was my absolutes. It's like where I'm going, what I have to find. And then this is a huge territory. So to find like 8 story in this huge space, that was an incredible challenge for me, and always from the beginning try to forget the fact there was a border, that it was a division of Mama, because at the end, I'm immersed in a territory where war, where disaster, where all things that we read every day, and suddenly there's like millions of people, and then I find one little character, and then I find some. So how do I connect all this? And so the first things that I had strongly inside me is I have to completely forget about the divisions, about, okay, some story I shot in Syria, some story I shot in Kurdistan, some story I shot in Lebanon. And this land was all somehow affected by ISIS. And then I started going into these borders. And I realized that these borders, there were layers of history. And I realized that this border had to become the margin of history. And I realized that this border had to be the division between life and hell, between life and destruction, between life and unknown, between life and the lack of future. And so this border for me, the more I was traveling, the more it became an abstract element, because then I was connected only to the story I met. And the story I met, they were bigger than the border. They were bigger because pain was universal. And I understood that war has an incredible power of reaching people so far away from the conflict and affecting people everywhere from so far away. So how do I make this in the film clear? That's why I decided in the film, which is, some people attack me a lot, the fact that I completely, in this film, you don't know where you are anymore. A lot of people say, well, I need to know where I am. But if you don't have that anxiety and you give yourself to the story of the people I met, I think at the end, if you are patient enough, you have all the answer you want. And at the end, there's no need to say where I am, because the story are bigger than the border. And anyhow, this border are border that were built in 1816, and they're like border that someone decided to design, to sketch on a table far away from the reality. So somehow in my subconscious, I wanted to confront myself to this element. And that's where I gave myself completely to the encounter that I had, and the story that I had. And the film is just, I gave myself to the story that I was following. And this story took 3 years to somehow find that element of synthesis on every single story. Because Ali has a huge, every character in the film could be like a 10 hours film. It could be a 5-hour film. And I decided just to tell a little fragment. So the decision to say which is the fragment that I want to tell, that was an extreme challenge in the film.
Yeah. And this, I think, maybe relates to the other thing I was hoping you could elaborate on that you said when we spoke a few weeks ago. In the process of shooting, you say when you return, when you're ready to shoot, you say that the main challenge for you at that point is finding the right distance to the subject. Can you elaborate on that idea of the distance between you and the subject?
This is, for me, is fundamental. From the beginning, I remember when I was filming Boatman, I was in a boat, very small boat, it was like 3 meters boat, and in front of me I had this boatman that I never met, and then I spent with him 5 years in this boat. And to find the right distance, I remember, between me and, if I were like 50 centimeters closer, it would be a different story. I had to find the right space around, and this is a big challenge every time, to find the point of view and to find the distance. That's why I think I'm filming with the clouds, because when I film with clouds, this I realized, I think a few weeks ago, because I said, why clouds, why clouds, why clouds? Well, I'm filming with clouds. And that was subconscious for me. But then now I'm very clear why. I can tell you, you know, because the clouds are the protagonists, like in the Greek tragedy, the chorus, but this is all mental. But in reality, I know why I film with clouds, and I discovered this year. Because with clouds, you have 360 degree, you can move. And there's no sun in front of your camera, there's nothing. So when there's clouds, you're able to find exactly the right frame, because you can move 360 degree, and there's no shades, and there's no impediment, and there's no things. So the light gives me an incredible world around, where I'm able to find the right frame and the right moment and the right position, because I'm able to, you know, when you have the sun against your camera, it's okay, you have to avoid that, the back. So they always teach you, you know, the sun has to be in the back, and then you're limited only to the front. But when there are clouds, you can move 360 degree, and you can find the right distance and the right situation where to film, and just having the person that you're working with completely free, and you're not worried anymore to where your camera is going to be, you know, because, oh, there's the sun against the thing, I'm going to miss it. So the clouds somehow give me a 360 degree narration, you know, and allowed me to frame and to be able to build the story within that frame, because that's another challenge I want to do constantly, to build the story within one frame. At least I did it in this film. I think this film I push it really far, that bar, you know. So I don't know what's going to be my next project, but in this film that was always my aim, you know, to find a story within that frame. And when I find that frame, I had to find the right distance with the person in front of me. And I'm being too close was wrong, and I felt that was wrong. Being too far was wrong, and you have to find in your instinct where is the right frame.
So is this, yeah, sorry, is this question?
Sorry,
go ahead. No.
I remember when I was a NYU student, one day, Mr. Scorsese, he came in the class and he said, there's only one frame possible, and there's only one position where you have to put the camera, and it's the right one. Only one. Mm-hmm. The rest is wrong. There's only one position. I remember thinking about this. There's only one position to film, and that's the right one. The rest is wrong. Wherever you put the camera is wrong. So you have to be able to find that right frame that tells the story.
So do you...
That's why I don't believe in, but not because, I don't believe that documentary is more real when it keeps moving around, you know, when it keeps moving the camera, when the camera is shaking, when the camera is dirty, when the camera can go anywhere, where the cameraman becomes part of the action and becomes an interaction. And I want always to be far away, and the audience forgetting that there is someone watching there. And because I want the audience to be part of the same journey I'm doing and the same discovering. Because I think if you go through the 2 hours of film and you're patient, you're gonna go on this journey. It's exactly the same journey I did. And in this journey, I was able at the end to find the answer without asking any questions. So also I want to put the audience in this exactly same point of view. And that requires trust. You know, I'm aware of that. And trust is like a big element of filming like that. Because I have to trust the person has to trust me, the producer has to trust me in my way of work, and the audience has to trust that from the first frame to the last frame, you're not gonna betray, you know, the sense of narration. And I think at the end, if you have that patience, the answer comes. Even maybe at the last moment of the film, when there's a close-up of Ali, we were talking about that, you know. Yeah. It was a hard choice to decide to put in that close-up the whole weight of the film, this boy that is 13, 14 years old. And he's carrying basically in that little close-up of 30 seconds, he carries all the answer, I think, of the film.
Yeah. Some audience members have been submitting questions, and one of them actually relates to a question I wanted to ask you. So the question is from Una Morera, who wants to know if you are afraid of anything because you seem fearless in your films. And I actually had a question for you about danger and how that affects your process, because I think the element of danger is there in some of your work, certainly in Notturno and also in El Sicario, I would say. And so, this question of fear and danger and how that affects your process and your approach.
The first step in this film was about security. It was about to get permits to film, because every single image you see in the film, it was months of permission in order to take out the camera and film. It was never a place that was improvised. And once I did all my journey, for every single place I put the camera, it was requiring a lot of permits. The psychiatric hospital, the location, every location was a location where nobody was allowed to film. And so I had with me incredible producers, from Syria, from Iraq, from Lebanon, Kurdistan. I had incredible, that I never met before in my life. They knew a little bit about the way I worked, and then I met them, and then I had to trust these people completely. And then within this meeting, the local producer, had to meet the assistant that was going to be with me in every single place. And we never knew each other, we never met, but I met the right people. And in that moment, I trust completely the people I had to trust. They had to trust me, and I had to trust them. Again, trust. And there, I never had fear, because I was able to communicate and to trust every single decision we did, to stay, to leave. The big challenge was like how long I can stay here and when I have to leave, and then maybe come back constantly. This was a constant element of how long can you stay in a place, because I had really one moment of terrifying idea where we, in the marshland, in the border with Iran, where there's a scene with the fire, with the hunter, where everything is like this place that you see the world upside down. Everything, for me, this is the most metaphoric, the war in the background. Maybe it's not even word, but that's this constantly shooting constantly. And this hunter that I met completely accidentally on the road, and he became part of my film. It took me 2-3 years to film that little segment, to get the permission to go there. We got the permission, and then I wanted to shoot at night. So we went at 6 o'clock in the evening. We went in this border, and they said, "You don't have the permit to be here." So yeah, we have the permit. He said, "No, this is like only for the day, because at night it's our curfew. So you cannot shoot here." So it took another like 3, 4, 5 weeks to get the right permit to be at night. And that place is a very dangerous, one of the most dangerous places in Iraq. There in Basra, or the south of Iraq. It's like where 3 million people died in the war between Iran and Iraq. It's a very, very dense place. And, having a foreigner there and kidnapping, it's like, boom, you're cash at that moment, So after 3, 4 weeks I was there, the day came that someone realized that, I could be kidnapped there. And for many strange reasons, we were able to, that day I was filming really inside, and element that we had around us for just a split of a second, it happened that the tragedy was not there. And when I asked my assistant, I said, "What would have happened here?" He said, "Well, they would have shot us and take you." I said, "What do you mean they would have shot you?" Yeah, that's what happened. They shoot us, and then you're gonna be with them, and then your government is gonna. So there, I felt like horrible, like I'm with people that are risking their life with me, and that's where you become aware of how much danger you put yourself in, and is it worth it? I don't know. I realized when I came back and when I started editing the film, after spending 3 years, because in 3 years I never really see the whole footage of the film. When I start editing, I say, how did I do all that? How was possible to meet all the people that are in the film, and how was possible to shoot? So when you're there, you don't realize it so much. The only thing you do is like trusting completely the people that are with you, and they're giving their own life and their own every moment. And we are only 2 people every time, because we are a very small crew. just me and my assistant, and my assistant was the driver, it was the translator, it was my companion, it was my advisor. It was like this incredible where you sleep in places that you don't think you can spend the night with. You eat where you can eat, but then at the end there is an idea of, again, of the people you met and you want to tell the story to, and they are giving, again, they open completely their door and they allowed you to enter in some space of their life which is so private and so specific and so small. And that's what I like to find always, that that element of truth for me, you know, that is there and reflecting what I think is real about what I'm filming in that moment.
Another question, comment. This is from Braden King, who says he saw one of the drive-in screenings last night and found the images almost overwhelmingly experiential.
Experiential?
Yeah. And he would love to hear you speak a little more directly about the production process. He says, it's hard for me to understand how many of the film's images were captured, the lighting, composition, it's also perfect and precise. Perhaps it simply comes down to patience, but if you could talk a little bit more about your moment-to-moment shooting and process and lighting, he'd love to hear about it. Braden is also a filmmaker, so I'm sure he has a very particular interest in this.
Probably 3-4 years ago, it would be impossible to do a film like that, to film in such low light without any light assistant. Everything is like real light in the film. Sometime I had like a little torch, like very, very small torch to give but they were never light. So what the technology, I've been shooting with this Arriflex Minima camera, which was fantastic and allowed you really to film at night, you know. Allowed you to film, to capture whatever your eyes sees. And in that area where I put the camera really on the extreme, it was in the marshland. And the only light that was coming there was the light from the patrol things. And that was a scene that was described to me when I met, by chance, the hunter, Mortara. And he was telling me that he was hunting in this place, in the marshland. And I said, why in the marshland? Because he said, because at night, there's so much light coming from the oil pump that the birds arrive. And during the season, you know, I can see the birds through the light of the thing. So the way he was describing that, it was amazing. And when I met him again after 1 year, and I went to this appointment, he said, I'm going to meet you in 1 year. I'm going to be there and filming you. And again, this is like how you get trust with these people that I met. You get trust because I never had the camera with me when I met them. So it was always, okay, we're going to meet in 3 months. We're going to meet in 6 months. We're going to meet in 1 year. And when I arrived there, ready to film, they couldn't believe. You said, so, well, you didn't betray me. So you're really here because you're interested in my story. In that moment, everything was open. You know, they were giving me completely their time, and we spent with him like 1.5 months, 2 months together in different seasons, in different moments. And the light is possible because the technology right now is so incredible. When you film with this digital camera, with a bright lens, you're able to capture whatever your eyes doesn't see. And this is incredible. And of course, you have to be patient. You have to be thinking. You have to, again, be able to miss and go around. I was staying with him daily when he was hunting. And then you start knowing the area where he goes. You start knowing that he goes in certain area. And then you follow him. And there is a routine always that you have to be able to capture. And the routine is always there. You know, every day we do things in the same way. You know, we wake up, you do things. When you go to work, you do certain things. And when I'm able to be close to this element, then I'm able to capture or sometimes anticipating certain things. And the only things that I wait with extreme diligence is the light, you know, because I don't shoot when the bright light. So for me, it's also a way to postpone the pain of filming, because filming is very painful for me. I don't do that very easily. It's a very painful moment because I always have a recollection that all my best things happen when I'm not filming, and the relationship I build is without camera, and the moment I spend is without camera. So when I put the camera, I know that I have to bring all the relationship that we had before into a moment of truth, into a moment of it. And that's changed everything, changed for me and changed for the person that is in front of the camera, that thing. That's when I say I don't believe in observation, because when the moment you put the camera, things change, no matter what. The camera transforms things, then become cinema. The moment you put a frame and the moment you put the camera, things change, no matter what. And you never know what's happening the moment you take out the camera. Something happened that you never thought before. Sometimes it's amazing, sometimes doesn't work. But there are moments that they surprise you, and these are the moments that I'm looking forward always. And there are moments that no writer and no actor can perform or writing for me, because then there are moments that I would never be able to write. I would never be able to think before. And sometimes when you're there and you look into the loop and you think, I say, wow, what's happening right now? It's like reality that becomes so powerful and so incredible. And I was never able to think that moment could happen in front of the camera.
So with these images that, we're talking about, these precise and dense images, were you consciously setting out to challenge just the imagery of war, which is something that we consume a lot of in our daily lives? I think this is, has been already a very widely documented conflict, and we see a certain kind of image in the journalistic or documentary realm, and we see a different kind of image maybe in the realm of the fiction film. I think the many films about war, I think it was actually, and I think Truffaut actually said that every film about war ends up being pro-war because it shows war in a certain way. So I'm wondering if you were thinking about these questions as you set out to, tell certain stories that are caught up in conflict.
I was in place of war in this journey. I was in place where people that were fighting, and then I knew that was not interesting to film there, because people shooting. You never understand who's the enemy. You never understand who's shooting why and why. It's so complex. And it's so, what worries about waiting, the moment of fight, and then 3 weeks, nothing happened. And then in 1 day, something happened. But whenever happens something, you're always into the wrong moment, into the wrong position. Because I remember when I was in Syria, when the Turkish, they were attacking Kurdistan, the Kurdish part of Syria. And I was like, I say, I want to be really on the border. And through incredible vicissitudes, we arrived there, and there was nothing. There was no element of fight. There was no element. And then at night, we're there, boom, there was a bombing suddenly, but it was too late. And then what do I film? Bombing is not interesting. It's like, what? So at that moment, I decide, okay, what I have to film is not the war itself, but I have to film where the war arrives, where the war has an impact. The war has an impact in daily life of people. That's what I wanted to capture. Ali, in the guy that to survive has to go hunting, in the mother. And also the film is about memory, because when you deal with the border, and the border, which is so complicated, such a stratification, you have to deal with memory. And the memory of history, the memory of the characters. So all story, at the end, if you've seen the film, they're part of something that happened before. And the people in the present, they bring up the pain of the past into the present. The mother, the phone call. Ali himself, constantly, in the way he's interacting, his thoughts, they always go in a very broad past and a very vivid present. There is this constant exchange where the memory is always present. When in the close-up of Ali, I'm sure there is a moment where his memory goes everywhere, and that's what I wanted to be able to capture. The memory of the pain, and I think most of the scene in the theater is like that. They talk about the past, they talk about the past and within the present. So there's a journey always that goes from the past into the present constantly. And that's for me what it was, to deal with the border. It was like to be able to allow the border to come out with the complexity of the memory, with the complexity of the layers that all this history has, and how do you bring it up in a single story, that's why before I said to you is the synthesis what that interests me. I cannot fulfill a life. We don't know this mother, where they come from. We don't know where they go, but there's a moment there that is everything. The mother against the wall and the mother with the picture. There's a moment of Ali. Ali, he has an incredible big life. I just capture this day, this fragment of waking up, going with the hunter, going fishing, bringing food to the family. And these are always small moments. The hunter, he goes hunting. We don't know where he's coming from. He's coming from war. He's married. We don't know anything about him. We see him in a bike, incredible image. That's why I met him, in this bike like this, with his face, with his hands. Just this guy going like almost like the, how we say this, like a road movie, like it becomes like this chopper, Easy Rider, it becomes this Easy Rider from, and then suddenly he brings him to this world, and this world transforms itself because it goes in a river, and this river becomes dark, and suddenly this river becomes the world upside down, where you see 3 sunsets almost, where you see everything is red, where he's waiting, and you don't know what he's waiting. When he's waiting, there's an echo of the war around him, and these all sound are real. When I was filming, all the sound I hear, all the Kalashnikov is real sound, and he doesn't do anything. He just wait there. So the wait is an incredible narration in the film. The wait for the enemy, the wait for war. And I was telling you, the beginning of the film, when there is the soldier, for me, that's the metaphor of the whole film, because I shot that scene in 30 seconds. I arrived there, they gave me the permit to go into this base of training in Kurdistan. I keep hearing the sound of every morning, the sound of the soldier, like the Marines, you immediately know the training, the training camp. So I got the permit to go there. I arrived there 4 o'clock in the morning, incredible light, it was raining. The first light is out, I put the camera down, and they were running. And I put my eyes there, my eye on the eyepiece, and these people, they were arriving and screaming, boom. And then they go away, and everything's peaceful, it's finished. And then boom, something else happened again, and then peaceful, and then there's all an echo. At the end, there's also an echo of this warrior, and they're interacting with the camera in such a strong way, because every time they're near to the camera, they have to show off, and they do this, and then they go away, and then, and I was hating that when I was filming. I said, fuck, why do they do that? It's like when you film and someone is waving to you, so it's ruining all my shot. So, but then I understood that this was important, because again, this is the camera changed things. The camera, people, they start acting somehow in front of the camera. Esquire used to say, the best actor is the actor that performs without the knowledge of performing, And every time there is a camera, people change their behavior. It's like when you go to an analyst, you change things you say when you're in front of an analyst. You will never say to yourself, you will never write it down, but that moment you're able to bring things out. So the camera, somehow it changed things, no matter what. That's why I don't believe in the camera being objective. Once the camera there's no objectivity anymore, because there's a frame, and because the person or the thing you're filming, it changed, no matter what, that camera changed interaction. It changed me and changed what I have in front of me. And that's what we have to deal with, without forgetting that the moment I want to capture is always the moment of truth, and the moment of the knowledge that what I have in front of me is real. And that's when people ask me, is it for you important? What's the difference between the documentary and fiction? I don't care about that. I care about the difference between true and false. And that is, in all art is like that, in a photography, in a painting, in a sculpture, in a fiction film, the difference between true and false, that's what is important to me. and not so much the difference between documentary and fiction. This is kind of an element that doesn't interest me anymore, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if you do the most objective documentary and you do like asking question to someone, you're already making a choice. You come there with a camera and you're interacting with someone, you already have a question that are ready there and the person has to answer. So where you shoot him, in a chair, where he's sleeping, in the bathroom, in the kitchen. So every choice you do, it changes the truth of what you have in front, you know. So no matter, so I don't believe in this objectivity of documentary. Once you put the camera, things change, no matter though. And this we learn from Flaherty, I think, or from De Seta, or from the big master of documentary, you know. Imagine Flaherty in Anouk. He did to us, you know.
On that note, actually, this question of performing for the camera, there's a question from Mary Hale who wants to hear a little bit more about the psychiatric hospital and the play, whether that was scripted or if it was your idea.
Oh no, it was nothing in the film is scripted, because I'm a very poor. That's why it took me so long, you know, to do things, because I don't know how to write. I don't know how to think before. I only can think when I see things inside of me. Again, the hospital was an absolute, was a very important place. You know, when people ask me, why don't you do fiction? Because I said, I want to start with a script, because I'm not interested. Once I have a script, to bring that script into the screen doesn't interest me. What interests me is to find that story. And that story I can find only if I look inside of the camera. Slowly, 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 I can find the story. And once I have the story, the film is done. In fact, like, I never write anything before. I write my script at the end of the film. When I finish the film, then I'm able to write the script. That's why it also is very difficult to raise money for a film like that. But anyhow, let's go back to the Baghdad. It's another absolute. And here is Baghdad. Mm-hmm. This spot here. And the Baghdad hospital is a place that since Saddam has been like a place, you know, imagine a city like Baghdad, how many layers of pain, of destruction of things, and people arrive there, they've been affected by all that. So for me, the hospital, again, also my producer and the people that helped me to do the research, they told me you have to shoot in the Baghdad hospital, psychiatric hospital. And when I went there, I discovered this world, you know, it's so hard to put the camera inside that place. And I went there maybe 10 times, 15 times in that place. Every time I'm in Baghdad, I go there for 3, 4, 5 days. And yet I don't know how to put the camera. Still, we didn't have any permit to film, but I still was going there. And then suddenly we got the permit to film. I didn't know what to film. And they told me, you can film anything, but not the patient. And then I said, well, so what do I do? So, well, you had yesterday, a few days ago, a BBC crew, and they stay here for 3 days, film me, but they didn't film the patient. I said, well, but maybe they could describe, you know, the place. I cannot do that. I need to film. But anyhow, we went through all that, and yet I didn't have the permit to film. And then the last time, I asked my Salam, my assistant, more than an assistant, he was everything there. He was my consultant, he was everything. He is everything, Salam. And I said, please, Salam, let's go back to the place. Oh, no, let's not stop. We cannot go back there. Please, let's go back there. Go back there. I start going around the place. And suddenly I discover a door opening, and there's a theater. And in this theater was a screen, and then 10 people, they were there watching themselves performing, and was the play, basically. So I go out and ask the doctor, who is the director of the play. I said, what's happening there? I said, this is a play that I wrote, and I do with different patients every time. And it's a therapy that we are doing. And what is the play about? This play is about our land. It's called Homeland. But it's about Iraq? No, it's about the Middle East, he said. So, and then he described me. So we show images, we show things, and we go from the colonial period into what's happening right now. We keep updating the play. And I asked my assistant to translate this to me. He went for 3 days to translate the whole thing. It was fantastic. I said, okay, this is my film. This is what I need in the film. This is the fil rouge of the film. So we went back there, and they agreed that I could film the new people coming for this therapy session. And I spent there a month basically filming this process. So in the theater, and they gave me also the permit to film into the room where they do the memorization and things. And then I think that this became the most strong encounter that I had. Again, this is something I could never think or never write or never, and it's something I met, and I decided in that moment that this film without this would not exist, basically. This is what gave to the film the support and the pillar of history, you know. And it's absurd that all this coming, you know, from an element of the mind that is somehow somewhere else, you know. So also the truth there of history is performed by people that they don't have a strong relationship with daily life, and somehow I think it's so moving for me. That's the play, that's the moment where I feel like when there's a close-up of the patient at the end with the music and with everything, it's a moment that is extremely moving for me.
Yeah. There are actually two questions.
Nothing was written there. It was just another encounter, a very profound encounter that if I think what's happening now to these people now, I don't want even to think, because 4 years ago, ISIS arrived like 3 kilometers from the place. And then there was a moment where apparently things were changing. And now with the virus, it's a completely disaster. I spoke a few days ago with Salam, and he said it's a tragedy. It's a total, they don't have medicine anymore. Nobody's allowed to get into the place. And the situation is a completely disaster in that place. Even the doctor is not able to go there anymore.
Right.
So somehow it's incredible, because this film, it filmed the moment between the end of ISIS, and we didn't know, and then the coronavirus, which is going to create an enormous damage in that area again. And I think yesterday Salam was telling me, when you come back here, maybe in 6 months, maybe in 1 year, we don't know, you're gonna find a completely different place than what you filmed. So we're gonna have to face another hard moment in our life, and we don't know what. ISIS is getting bigger. The international coalition left completely the territory, and there's no more. People are suffering of extreme poverty everywhere. Nobody has money anymore. Daily life is a disaster. So what's going to happen after this pandemic? Things is going to profoundly change Middle East, and we don't talk anymore about Middle East. There's not a single news that's in New York, in Italy, in Europe. People don't talk anymore about Middle East. We abandoned completely that area, and we're just thinking about now our own emergency.
Yeah,
very sad. This, and I think this is like, it's true that in a year time or 6 months time, when this will be hopefully, this is an area that's going to be tremendously affected by all that.
Yeah, you did say you've talked about this as a film that you felt the need to get this film out this year. You know, you didn't want to wait, because in some ways you think of this as a film that captures something about the moment. You know, maybe this sort of state of. It's a very quiet film, you know, and it's in some ways it's quite a haunting film, and I think there's something about the film that matches the state of suspension that has defined the year.
Yeah, and I realized this way on the editing. You know, the film, we were thinking before to go to Cannes with this film, and then Cannes was cancelled. And during the summer, I was editing the film, and the first edit I did before doing my second trip, October. So I did one summer edit, and then October, November, December, January, February, I went back filming, and then we start editing again in February, March, April, for when the pandemic was, the lockdown was. So after my first editing, when everything was normal here in our life, I think it's such an incredible film because there's a sense of suspension, there's a sense of distance, there's a sense of not action, there's a sense of weight toward the future. And I thought that I think I've pushed this too much in the editing. You know, there's no life based in the film. Everything is suspended in this future that we don't know where it's going to be. And I was having enormous doubt. I said, this is impossible that we can read this film, you know, from our point of view. And then during the second edit, after February, March, April, May, June, I started realizing there was an incredible connection between our moment of suspension of the future and the moment of course, with the difference that our moment is just 2-3 months. It was, and that moment is like 100 years, you know, of suspension of the future. Because as you see also in the hospital, all this film, it goes from the colonial period, then a revolution, then another revolution, then another thing. It's like constantly hope. It's like the soldier at the beginning, hope, and goes, and then the echo, and then change, and then a moment of quietness, and then again a disaster. Look what happened in Lebanon right now. You know, this horrible disaster that happened in Lebanon. And nobody knows still there. Nobody talks about what happened in Lebanon. It's destroyed. It's the country in Beirut. It's a country, it's a city completely destroyed, and nobody spent a single word on that. But this is a world that is living this sense of suspension for years. Ali was born on that. All the people you see, they were constantly, their life was there. And when they lose everything, they lose their house, they lose everything. They're just the moment that allowed them to survive. And that's what I learned about this film, the sense of acceptance, the incredible sense of acceptance. We, you know, after 2 months, we were locked in our house. We were completely lost, people neurotic, people going crazy. We don't know what's happening tomorrow. It changed profoundly our thing. And there's like years that this is going on. But I found that there was a correlation, you know, of at least in the mood of the film. And then I decided, no, this is the film. I cannot wait a year, because if I wait a year, it's going to be a completely different film, you know, in a year. So this is a film that has to be out now, no matter what. I have to accept all the consequences. I know that the film is not going to be in theater. I know that the film is not going to be, I'm not there talking to the audience. I'm here in this room where when I edit the film, and still after a year, I'm in the same room discussing the film, which is absurd. But I think that this film belongs now. 1 year later would be, I would not even be able to defend this film, you know, because who knows what's going to happen to me in 1 year. Right now I can defend the film, I can talk about the film. Later I would not be able to tell you with such emotion, you know, what I'm telling you right now.
Yeah. We are coming up in an hour, but since there are 2 questions about your editor and your working relationship with your editor, I think we should pose them to you. Samantha Sartori and Katrin Titze both want to know about your longtime collaboration with Jacopo Quadri, your longtime editor.
Yeah, since my first film, Jacopo, you know, we are like so close. We never need to discuss anything. With Jacopo, we talk very, very little on the editing. Jacopo is he's almost like Ali Jacopo. He doesn't talk, you know. And when something is wrong, it's like, these are the sound that he made. But it's a long trust relationship. And in this film, there is a person, Federico, who collaborated with me since Sacro Gra, and he is really an important part of the work. So somehow in this film, we were able to be 3 people together. It was Fabrizio, it was Jacopo, and it was me on the editing. And Fabrizio has a credit also as a co-editor in the film. And it was a very complex editing. My previous film was very fast to edit, you know, because they were like shooting a certain way. Everything was very clear. It was a very small place. Everything was like in a small element. Your boatman was there in a boat, in a theme, one character. Below sea level, like few characters, but was a very small area, although this area represents for me an entire world, like almost like no man land is a bit of that below sea level. The Sicario was in one room. Sacro Gra is in a small, tiny island. And so the Sacro Gra is in this route around Rome. Farad Sea was in a small island. And here finally I find myself interacting with a huge world, with the world that belongs to hundreds of years of conflict of things, and it was very difficult to go from one story to another story, to deny the belonging of every story, to build that element of continuation between one character, because then become character when you edit, they're not anymore lived. It becomes, when you leave a story and go to a next story, where is the moment, if you tell something more, you don't want to leave anymore that story, and then you're lost. So you have to find the right moment when you leave that story. Some story, they never come back. Some story, they consume itself in just one section. Some character, they come back after 45 minutes. You find them again. Some story that carry you throughout the movie, but they come out after. Ali, he's the main character of the film. I would say character now, sorry. He's the main protagonist of this film, and he comes into the film after 25 minutes, Ali. So there's 25 minutes of something, then suddenly you are in this phase, and you think, okay, where is this taking? So I'm sure this is a film that requires a lot of interaction with the audience. It's not an easy film to accept. I think so. I'm ready always to get all the criticism on the film, but it was a very extremely complicated editing and an act of love, towards all the people we were carrying on. And no story that were left out of the film, when sometimes Jacob has some doubt about some stories, I say, no, Jacob, we have to put this in. I never betrayed, when I start a story, I want all the element to be there, because it's been 3 years of life altogether, and I don't want to leave anyone out of the film. And so to have 8 story in a 100 minutes film, such complicated story, to find that moment, that synthesis that we were talking at the beginning, that element that is the synthesis of every single story, was extremely difficult. And it was 6 months of editing, was at the end, when we find finally the right structure, which is again a musical thing. It's like to go from one note to another note to another note, and every note has to belong to the next note. And but there was never a script. So every time was like finding and refining, starting from scratch. And when you find a problem, we realize that the problem is never where the problem is, but it's much earlier. So when you go much earlier, it means that you have to start from scratch again. So we started so many times from scratch this film. It's interesting to see all the editing structure of the film, to go through maybe 40 versions, to see how things change. Sometimes very little, but you don't know that you're there. And then you change completely. And then at the end, you discover you're there. And then you say, why we didn't do it like 4 months ago? That was so easy, it was so simple. Well, that was the only possible way to structure the film. But it took a lot of time, a lot of trust, a lot of love from all 3 of us, and a lot of dedication every day.
I think we do have to wrap up, but I'm just going to end on one final quick question for you. You already said you don't know what your next film is, but yet. But I'm wondering if you feel this thing that you mentioned earlier on, after Fire at Sea, you said you wanted to make something much more immediate and much more. Yeah, is that something you feel now, or? I
would love to do another film like Sicario, but I think that film is a unique film. That's Sicario with Charles Bowden.
Right.
It's my favorite film. It's like 3 days shooting, boom, boom, boom. It was like so fast, so no budget, no money, nothing. And it's a film I love so much, Sicario. But I think it's a unique film that it's impossible for me to redo a film like that. But this will be my dream, to be able to do another film in such a short time, and is unique, You saw Sicario.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean that film is different, and I think in that film is, you're kind of capturing the encounter as it's happening.
Yeah, but then it's somehow, from an absurd way, so cinematic, that film also. Cinema, that film, somehow. I don't know why, but it is cinema, that.
Absolutely.
It's a complete cinematic film,
Yep.
And for me, it's a mystery. how did it happen, all that. But it was a fantastic, fantastic way. I would love to find another film like that. You know, like
But
boom,
what your question, the thing you were saying earlier about like what happens
I
when
don't want to spend another 3 years like I did.
Yeah.
You know?
Right, but I think El Sicario also distills the question you said earlier about what happens when you put a camera there, because I think that is an incredible performance.
Yeah, it's an incredible performance.
Yeah.
He's a director himself.
Yeah.
I didn't have to say him anything, you know. He did everything. I have to give him tools. I gave him the notebook. I gave him a pen. He came with a hood. I had something to hide my camera. I said, no, the hood is too much. And then he put this net. And I changed the room because the room had to come like a theatrical space, the room of the motel. And I have to transform this into a stage, you know, because that's what it was. It was a performance that. And yet, reality and filmmaking, you know, when I was filming him, I filmed him for 2 hours upside down. He had this this notebook that he was writing, right? This, and I filmed from here. No, hold on, where I was. No, I filmed from here in front. I filmed in front. So for 2 hours, I'm upside down. I said, oh, what I'm doing, you know, I'm filming, and I couldn't stop. I said, this is so wrong. You know, I imagine CNN sent me to film this. They give back this footage for 2 hours. But then I said, no, this is right. This is right. This is right. The next day, I asked him to just go through his notes. So I had another point of view. And that's it. You know, basically it's like 2 shots. And then 2 months later, after I did my first editing, I realized that I missed something. And I said, can we have one more time? And I realized that this place was a place of torture, where he was torturing people. And I said, but he didn't say anything about that place. That was a room where I was sleeping for 5 days before meeting him. And then I went there and said, can you please tell me what happened in this place? And then he started this incredible performance. And there with the camera, he started this incredible performance there in front of the phone call, the things, like incredible. So that's when I say when camera changed things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a film that is unique piece, you know. I would love to make a film again like that, you know, 3 days work and a solid film, no budget, no nothing, no producer. It was like fantastic.
Well, we're looking forward to the next one, whatever it is.
Okay.
Thank you, Gianfranco, for joining us.
It's fascinating. Someone sent me the picture of the driving yesterday. It was through the car.
Mm-hmm.
Friend of mine, and Ali face was like.
Yeah, we wish you could have been here, but you know, we'll bring you here for the next one. So,
thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining us, Gianfranco. Thank you again.
Thank you. You're the best.